is Gary Rutkowski, and today is August 26th, 2005. And today I'll be interviewing Lucille Bliss in Universal City, California. All right, we're just about ready.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we're going to start at the beginning with some background questions. And the first question I'm going to ask is, what was your name at birth?
What was my name? Same as it is now, only I took out the middle name.
Oh.
The middle name was Teresa because I thought when I was little they would call me TB. You get what I mean? So I took it out.
And where were you born?
New York City.
And when
Manhattan.
And when were you born?
Oh, do I have to tell you that too?
Sure.
Okay. I was born at 3/31/16.
Okay. You want to tell me the day?
On a Friday.
Okay.
Good things happen to me on Friday. I always like Friday because I was born on a Friday.
And the date?
The 31st of March.
And the year?
1916.
Okay.
I just said it.
Oh, okay. And where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Manhattan?
For a while, only till I was about 4 or 5, and then we moved to Springfield, Mass. And we stayed there. My mother was a concert artist, a great pianist, and we stayed there for a while, and she opened the Juilliard Conservatory branch in Springfield, Mass.
Wow.
Yeah. But then we went, later on, after that, we went to Kansas City on the way to California because my mother had relatives there. And I was about 12, and then I came to San Francisco, California.
And what was your mother's name?
Frida Siemens.
And so she was well known?
She was well known. She was known as although we were many nationalities, but her education was in Germany. She was the last pupil of Karl Schumann, and she studied with Brahms and all the great masters. And she was known as a wonder child, the German pianist, although it was the city, it wasn't completely German. But that's what.
And what was your father's name?
Dr. James Francis Bliss.
And he was a doctor?
He was definite, dental surgeon.
Okay.
Definitely American. All the way back. I might say President Garfield was his great-uncle. My great-great-uncle, I guess.
And when did you come to California?
When I was 12 years old. I don't know what year that was. It was in the 40s somewhere. I can't remember the date exactly. That was a long time ago.
Okay. And what did you want to be when you grew up?
An actress. I told my grandmother, and she believed me, and I used to take a little horn and pretend it was a microphone and make her sit down, and then I would recite poetry and all that, pretend it was a show. And my favorite poem was Barbara Allen, the sad Barbara Allen. I always said Barbara Allen because it sounded so sad. And my mother wanted me to be an opera singer, but God, I'm not made to be an opera singer, not physically or anything else. And thank grandmother who stood on my side that I could stay with this. It was a hard thing when grandma passed away because then mother had full range to say, you're going to be an opera singer. And I said, no. It was hard. At first when I started out, she didn't want to recognize it at all. It was not easy, but then she knew that I had it, and she realized that I was an actress. God, I wanted to be since I was a kid, you know?
So were you taking singing lessons?
No, that's what was so strange. Mother was not very practical all the time. Did she think it was going to be instant opera? But one thing she did, I had to give in on that, and I hated it. When I graduated from high school, they say in your yearbook what you want to be. I had to put, I want to be an opera singer. And what a lie. I was starting to act then. I didn't want to be an opera singer. But I had to give way or mother would have been no peace.
Where did you go to high school?
Lowell High School.
And did you go to college after that?
I went to college I tell you, I had started with the acting, and I had started college. I went to UC at night. They had your night in San Francisco. And I went for about 2 years, but then I realized I studied because I wanted to know how it comes about. I studied advertising. Believe radio advertising was radio with that. I wanted to know how you got programs on and all that. And then I did layout advertising, and I studied acting, those three. But I figured in my career, I should know how it's done, what's behind the scenes.
What do you think are some of the valuable things you learned from studying advertising?
I learned, well, one thing, color, and I did layout, you know. I was good at layout. I did very good layouts. They said, boy, you would really be very successful as an artist. But I learned that, and from the other side, the business side of it, I learned to get a sponsor and how it works and all that. And I thought, that's going to help me. I want to know what's going on behind the scenes as well as on the scenes, because I'd like to be on the scenes.
And how did you break into professional acting?
Well, I started, my mother let me have then some dramatic lessons. Well, first, no. I twisted mother's arm to take me to KSFO. They had a radio show on with children at times. And it was Barbara Cuddy, I think was the one. It was her school. And I wanted to be on it, and she put her plays on. So I said to my mother, I want to go. And so we went to an audition. And Miss Cuddy said she's very talented, but she should have some lessons for technique. She doesn't know the technique of radio, you know, because there is a technique, how to speak and how to use your voice and all that. So I had all that. And then I started, I worked on one radio show, and then, let's see, what happened after that? I joined Professor Bernard J. McOwen's Radio Players. And this was really exciting because we were doing True Detective Mysteries on KLS, a radio station in Oakland, a small one, on Sunday afternoon, because this is radio, there's no picture. So people would come to the radio shows to see them. They couldn't turn on a TV set to see a show. So when we did that, we did these shows with the big bands that were going overseas. So those were the war years. When they were going overseas, we did them with Kate Kaiser, Ray Badu, Carrie James, everybody who was going overseas. On Sunday afternoon, they had an hour show, and they entertained for a half hour, and we did a half-hour radio show of True Detective Mysteries. That was my first.
So you were sort of playing a variety of roles?
Yeah, different roles, and that's, I guess, I discovered that I had to do voices. They needed a little boy one day, and they said, you got to be the boy. And I said, where is the boy? Well, you're the boy. I'm the boy? Oh, so I'll be the boy. Okay, why not? I'm going to be the boy. Am I a nice boy? Or am I a tough little boy? No, you're a nice boy. So that's the way it all began.
Did you also learn accents in different languages?
Well, I speak. Grandma was a linguist, my grandmother. And I learned French was my first language, and then German and English. And I picked up here in L.A. poquito español, and that's the way it is. So but accents, I was good at that. I'd listen to them and listen and how they went, and I developed it. But I even studied Japanese.
Did you listen to the radio? Did you have shows that you liked?
Yes, I can't even remember. I liked all the big comedy shows with Eddie Cantor and Jack Benny and all that. I met them all in person. Do you want to know how? I'll tell you how. Well, I wanted to go to see a lot of plays too, and we were not well off. We were okay, but I was not a rich child. So I figured if I could write, I found out from the guy who ran the Curran Theater, which is still there in San Francisco, that if I would write a column, he could let me come in free. So I said, okay. In school, they said I had great talent for writing. So I went around to the neighborhood newspapers, and I got to write for the Sunset Dispatch for quite a few years. And I wrote a radio column, and I went and as a critic, a very young critic because the critics like to have somebody else go. They hated to go to the show so many times, and they'd say, you go and tell us what it was. So I wrote the thing up, but through the radio column, I got to meet all the big stars. I got to meet Eddie Cantor in the elevator when he was coming up to NBC, and then I got to meet Jack Benny and Rochester and Mary, and I got to his press conference, and Jack was there with all the press, and they were all around. It was wonderful. Mary and Rochester sat way far away in the corner on a little bench. And Mary said, "Would you like to sit next to me, dear?" And I said, "I'd love it." And I said, why aren't you up there?" There was a pause. And she said, "Well, Jack handles that." So I thought, that's kind of miserable. Here's Rochester and Mary, and they're pushed off in the side. They never get to talk to the press. But I reviewed it, you know. And who else did I meet? Oh, my favorite actress was Paulette Goddard. I adored her. I thought she was the greatest. And what a wonderful thing. She was at NBC. She was going to do a song. They were going to record it there. And Artie Shaw was going to be the pianist. And she was sitting in the anteroom, and I happened to be there getting news for my little radio column. And she said, "Dear, what are you doing?" And I told her. She said, "Why don't you sit next to me?" She says, "I'm so nervous." She says, "I don't really feel comfortable singing. I'm not a singer." I said, "But you're such a wonderful actress, Miss Goddard." Oh, please. Well, anyway, Artie Shaw came in, and she said, "I want her in the room with us. I feel comfortable if she comes in." So fine. I went in and I sat there real quiet, and she was singing. She was all right. It was a little hard at first. The song was not the easiest, and he turned around, Artie Shaw. I thought I admired him. After that, I didn't like him at all. He says, "You know, you sound like an old crow." And I thought, how can this idiot, to this great actress who's so wonderful, who's doing this on the side, how can he criticize her? From then on, I didn't like him at all anymore. And I felt so sorry for her, but she did very well when she finished. She had a lot of expression. She didn't have a big voice. She's not a singer. She was a wonderful actress. My favorite.
Did you see her after? Okay, we're ready.
I also wanted to get into the Stage Door Canteen, but I was underage. So we fudged a little, and I got to go and do some things. And then they had...
Did you get performed?
Yeah. And then they had, what should I say, interview. Well, they had, in theaters after that, and this is not the canteen, this is other things. They'd have for the Armed Forces nights and things like that. And that was a few years later. And what happened is, Wally King, who was the top announcer at KSFO, and a friend of mine said, "Would you like to go to one of the Armed Forces talent shows?" "Oh, yes," I said, "I'd love it." So I went, and there was an announcer there, and he was the MC, and the servicemen would come on. He would tell all about his career. He'd tell all about the jokes. Then the serviceman came up. It's their show, remember. You wouldn't know it, though, and he'd turn around and say, "Oh, yeah, what's your name?" And the guy would say, "Oh, yeah, and you're in the Navy, huh? Well, what's that doohickey thing on your shoulder?" He said, "That's my rate." Oh, that's what that is. Isn't that funny? And that reminds me of a joke." And he went on like that, and I got very angry inside. I didn't like that at all, because I felt it's their show, not yours. So I said to Wally, he said, "Didn't you like the show?" "Yes," I said, "whenever they got to speak," but they hardly ever got to speak. He doesn't even know the rates. And I went on, and I talked a little loud, and a man tapped me on the shoulder in back, and he said, "What's that you're saying, young lady? I've been listening to you. I agree 100%. I run the Navy show." He was the public PR guy for the Navy. And he said, "I want you to come next week. We're going to have a man. We'll have, he said, "I'd like to have you on it with him." I said, "You mean I could be on the show?" "Yes." He said, "I'd like to have you do a little talking." He said, I said, "I'd like to know that the announcer doesn't do the whole show. It's not a radio show. It's an Armed Forces show." Okay, so I learned all the rates of the Navy, the Army, and the Marine Corps, and the Air Force. I knew all the rates. I knew what he called doohickeys. I knew the rates. So I thought I'd get to speak. I didn't get to speak at all. He went on, another announcer. He was doing his stuff in the same business. And there was a cake-cutting birthday ceremony part. And he looked at that, and I heard him say to the announcer, "Oh, let her do that." So he said, "You can do that, honey." So I thought, okay, my chance. So I said, "How many men having a birthday tonight?" And about 8 of them raised their hands. "Oh," I said, "we're going to have you all up here. Now, how about we'll start with Navy?" And he came up, and I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "I'm so-and-so." And I said, "And what's your rate?" "Jim." And I'll call him Jim. And he said, "Oh, I'm bosun first class." Oh, I said, "That's wonderful. You're first class already. You look so young." And I said, "What did you do before you came in the Navy? This is a talent show." Well, he said, "I had a little band." I said, "Where?" And he says, "In Pittsburgh." In Pittsburgh. I said, "How many guys in the audience are from Pittsburgh?" And, "Yay, we're all from Pittsburgh." Great. So I said, "And what happened to your band?" Well, he said, "We got in the service. We got separated. But we were playing all the little cafe shows and everything." And I said, "What are you going to perform tonight?" Because they did perform later, the winners. And he told me the name of the song and all that. I did that with all 8 of them. And when the show was over, the announcer was looking at me like he liked to kill me. But he said I could do the cake thing. And I looked at him, I said, "There's some more birthdays left." And what could he say? So, okay, they went on. And what happened is the same man came over and he said, "I saw that show, young lady. And do you know what? I want you to run the show. And I'll talk to you about it. You have to audition them. You have to rehearse them. You have to write up the thing. I'll show you the whole thing." And I did that for 18 years. And the first time when I did it, just me alone, the first time I picked the Marine Corps band. They were fantastic. And we sent them, because they were competing, it was Army, Navy. My guys were Navy. Marine Corps is part of the Navy. So what they did is they went ahead and put it on the show, and Sullivan, it was the last show he did, and the Navy, my guys won. And after that, he gave up the Army-Navy show at Talent. He'd done it for about 5 or 6 years. We made the last show, and my people won. And I did it for 18 more years. And then when...
Did it have a name, a title of the show?
No, it was a talent show. The Army Navy, not the Armed Forces Talent Show. That would be their show. It was for the Armed Forces, and it was for the servicemen for the 11 Western states on the West Coast here.
And where did it originate?
In San Francisco. No, it originated originally, where did it? Yes, I think in San Francisco, locally, our branch. And then we competed with the other cities, all the ones. And the all-city ones, they were the winners. That's where my Marine Corps guys were in for San Francisco, and we won. And that was wonderful, because it was the last, and it was Ed Sullivan's show, too. So I was very happy about that. I worked in the USO shows. I entertained. I arranged little shows and took them to the different bases. And one thing, what was I going to say? There was one thing. Took them to the bases. Oh, yes. And I did shows on every carrier at sea on the West Coast. Yep. The last one was the Coral Sea. And after that, the Navy Public Relations said, "We want a treat for you. We know you write sometimes little columns." And I said, "Yes." Well, he said, "This is big news. We let you go aboard the Sarah, the old Saratoga, before she goes out to the neutral, the, what do you call it? The God, I can't think of it. You know, when it blows up, the Saratoga was the test for the missiles. I'm trying to think of a term. I'm not into military. Military, yes, but not ammunition. It was our test of that big test they did to find out the atom bomb. That was it. She was the victim, the Saratoga. She was a big carrier. And I got on it before she left San Francisco for wherever they did it. And that was that. Now, let's see, I'm trying to think after that. And I did a lot of shows. And one of the shows I did was I got the show for, for the Edgar Bergen show. I became the sweetheart for Charlie McCarthy. We did the big show in, that was still in the end of the 40s. And that was, let's see, we did that at the Marine Memorial Club in San Francisco. Not because it was military, but because they had a big stage and everything else.
It was a live show, or was it?
A live show with audience. And I sat on the piano bench with Hoagie Carmichael, and he played Buttermilk Sky. And it was wonderful. And NBC gave me a farewell because they thought I was going to move to Hollywood to do the show. And a few days later, the phone rang, and it was NBC, and they said, "Lucille, unpack your trunks." I said, "Why?" They said, "Bergen's been canceled. There's no more show." said, no more show. Oh my God. Well, they said, I know it's hard, kid, but that's the way it is. I was crushed. And then I thought, I heard that Disney was auditioning for Cinderella. So
before you get to that, I wanted to ask you just a little bit, if you wanted to say a word or two about Edgar Bergen. What was he like in person?
He was the nicest man you want to meet, just like somebody you knew as a friend. He was so nice to me, and he was so much fun, and I felt so bad. And he was so talented when they canceled that show and they put on the Bickersons.
Oh.
Remember? It was, well, I can't think. I know the actors, but I can't think of their names offhand.
And your routine is you had a sketch, and you were...
And we skit with Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it's a sweetheart. I was a teenage foil for the sweetheart of Charlie McCarthy. And we worked with Bergen, and it was so wonderful. I thought heaven had opened up its doors, but boy, they shut quickly. I was out. So I said to my mother, I want to go down to Hollywood. Murray Boland was the producer and the director. And Murray had said, you are so talented, because I won this Bergen thing at NBC in a 4-hour audition. I stood in line with all the others. But I had something the others didn't have. I was the first one to put on a record my different voices. So everybody handed in their face and their routines. I mean, you know what I mean, all the paperwork. But I said, I put down some of my voices. I was selected for the Edgar Bergen show for that. That's where my advertising training had come in. But I wanted to get it.
So it was your own idea to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you produce it?
Well, I knew the guys, Wally King and the others at the radio station, and I'd say, look, I want to do some voices. I'm going to do an audition. Would you record me? And they said, sure, come on in. Yes, of course. God, I worked for a lot of those stations, did commercials and stuff. So I got all ready, and that's how I got Bergen.
And you had it on a record?
Little record, yeah.
Did you have a few of them that you could hand out, or?
No, just to Murray Boland, the director and producer of the show. He always took any paperwork or anything. The people all had pictures, a lot of pictures. I didn't have any pictures, but I had that. And he liked it. And he said, you've got the talent. It's so wonderful. And he said, if you ever come down to Hollywood, look me up. I'm at CBS. I'm doing the Margaret Whiting show. So you know the famous singer, Margaret Whiting. So I said, oh, fine. And I said to my mom, I want to go to Hollywood. And she said, oh, don't be ridiculous. You're a teenager. No, no, no. And I said, yes, yes, yes. Well, she said, all I can give you is $25. But one of the producers who I worked for, she was so wonderful. She said, I'll lend you 25 more in case you have to stay. And I said, and I will pay you back. And I did. And I went down, and I said, how did it happen? Oh, yeah, I went down and went to Disney Studio. But before I did, I had to pick up a cab. Because I'm getting ahead of the time. I went to see Murray at CBS, and I watched the Margaret Whiting show. And he said, you know, later today, they're auditioning out at Disney. Oh, I said, you mean for Cinderella? He says, maybe it's Sleeping Beauty. I'm not quite sure. But you should go out there. Well, I said, how can I? Well, he says, you get in a cab and go to Disney Studio and say you're going to the audition. They'll let you in. And if you have trouble, just tell him to call me, because he was a big producer. He produced also the circus shows, you know, the big circus shows that were on radio. I mean, on television. Yeah, he did that.
Yeah.
Murray had a big history. He was a wonderful human being. So what I did is I got in a cab, and the driver said to me, tell me, little girl, how much money have you got? I said, $7.50. Oh, he says, isn't that coincidental? That's exactly what it, oh, I said, is it? Yes. And we're driving. I said, you know, I could have sworn we went down these streets before. I could have sworn we did. Well, he said, this is Hollywood. When we have something good in Hollywood, we repeat it. I said, you mean they make the streets look alike? Oh, yes, they repeat the whole street and the buildings. Oh, I thought, gee, that's strange. So when I get to Disney, there was nobody there, and I thought, gee, I'm the only one at the audition. So I got to the door, and I knock on the door. There's nobody there, and a man comes out and says, what do you want? I thought, boy, that's not a very good greeting. And I said, well, I'm here for the audition. Well, he says, I hate to tell you this, honey, but you're 30 minutes late. Oh, I said, the cab driver, that's where we were going. You mean, Yes. He says, it's over. Oh, I guess I knew my money was gone, everything was gone, and again, another disappointment. No, I couldn't take that. So I said, oh dear, and I guess I looked so bedraggled. And he felt sorry. He says, honey, can you ad lib? And I said, yes. Well, he said, I've got the characters, but I don't have the script. He said, can you come up? If I give you, I'll have you do all the female characters on Cinderella. And can you come up with a voice and some words for them? And I said, yes, I can. Well, he said, okay. So I went for a half hour. He threw out a voice, stepsister, Cinderella, stepmother, so forth, fairy godmother. And I came up with just ad lib what I thought was right. He says, you're terrific. I bet you get to be on the show. Oh, I said, I hope so. So I went back home because I had no more money. I had to go back home anyway. So I went back home. And 3 months later, I called Disney Studios, and I got the professional board voice, which has to answer 1 million people the same question. About the audition, yes, for Cinderella. No, we haven't decided yet, my dear. Fine. So, okay, hung up. 3 months later, to the day, on a Friday again. On a Friday, the same voice, sounds a little better, says, is this Lucille Bliss? Yes. Well, we need you at Disney Studio for 9 days. We want you to come down Monday. We'll send a car for you. And what hotel will you stay in? Ah, here's the problem. I didn't know a hotel from the hole in the wall in Hollywood. But I remembered I worked for BBD&O, and my account, the account executive on the commercials, he always talked about the Hollywood Plaza. He said it has the best riding academy in town. I thought they got horses. So I said, the Hollywood Plaza. And she said, the Hollywood Plaza? And I said, yes. Well, be ready then by 8 o'clock on Monday. We'll pick you up. So I find out where the Hollywood Plaza is, and I go there, and I had phoned for a reservation, and I come in, and the clerk looks at me and says, what do you want? I thought, gee, they're not very friendly. I said, I have a reservation. Oh, he says, really? Yes. I said, I do. I gave him my name. Yeah, he says, you do. Okay. We'll put you up on this floor, and he wrote it down. And I said, all right. So I go upstairs, and a few minutes later, the phone rings. Hey, honey, you need company? No! I hung up. How rude. And a few minutes later, I saw you come in, little one. You're all alone, aren't you? I said, no, I'm not. I thought, this is awful. So I went down and I said to the hotel, what are all those men calling me for? You said you don't want them to call you? No, I said, of course not. All right. And I said, besides, I don't like the blankets in the bed. They've got lipstick all over them. He says, well, are the sheets dirty too? No. Well, then he said, what are you caring about? You use the sheet, don't you? The blanket's on top of the sheet. I thought, they're awful in this hotel. And I said, but anyway, as long as I'm here, this was the main reason I came. I want to see the horses. He says, the horses? Yes, the horses. You have a riding academy, the best in town. He said, oh, my God. And then it dawned on me something.
I'm going to have to interrupt you there, Lucille. We're at the end of the tape.
Okay.